Well, good morning, Southern Oregon, and welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema. I'm a broker here in beautiful Southern Oregon with John L. Scott Real Estate and your host of the show. And today we have a real treat because we get to interview Tina Grimes, the CEO of Valley Association of Realtors. And we get to go deep into the National Association of Realtors settlement lawsuit. There's some changes coming next month. A lot of brokers and a lot of brokerages are already practicing the new, all the new stuff. So Tina's going to bring us up to speed on what's different, how it affects Southern Oregon, how it affects buyers, and how it affects sellers. So super excited to have Tina Grimes, the CEO of Valley Association of Realtors, on the show today. While we're waiting for Tina to come in, let's do a quick check of the local housing statistics of Southern Oregon. We have 3 counties that we track: Jackson, Josephine, and Klamath. Let's start with Josephine County this week. Prices are up year over year in the residential market in Josephine County this week by 16%. The average single-family home in Josephine County costing $557,685. The number of solds in Josephine County this week are up 8% year over year. We had 13 closings on SOMLS in Josephine County. Number of listings year over year are up 12%. For Josephine County, we have 394 active listings on SOMLS this week in Josephine County residential markets. Jackson County prices year over year are about neutral. The average single family home in Jackson County costing $513,959. Number of sold year over year in Jackson County are down 40%. 24 closings on SOMLS this week in the residential markets. Number of listings year over year in Jackson County are up a smidge by 2%. 783 active listings on SOMLS this week in Jackson County. Klamath County prices year over year are down 16%. The average single family home in Klamath County this week costing $262,666. The number of sold year over year in Klamath County were down 55%. There were only 9 closings on SOMLS this week in the residential market in Klamath County. The number of listings in Klamath County were up 15% year over year. There are 311 active listings on SOMLS in Klamath County residential market this week. So we still have some volatility. We do seem to be bottoming out. We're grateful for the listings we have on the market. So thank you, sellers. But folks, we still need more. We're still shorter than we were this time last week. So in the meantime, let's welcome Tina Grimes, CEO of Valley Association of Realtors, into the studio. Well, Tina Grimes, it is so great to have you back. Thank you again.
Happy to be here.
So a lot has happened in the real estate world since last we met.
Just a couple things, yeah.
Just a couple of things. So I think what's most on everybody's mind is getting educated about the new law changes for real estate brokers and folks working.
Yeah. So to give you, for people who may not know, because not everybody is as entrenched in things as I am or you are. So this goes back to 2019 when 2 lawsuits were filed, one in Missouri and one in Illinois, that were alleging that sellers were overcharged for the representation that their agent gave them, and it inflated costs to them. So they those were the lawsuits. They were declared class action lawsuits, which then meant other sellers could be invited to join in. That started back in 2019. Last fall, the first of the 2 cases went to trial. And I'm not going to take time to get into all the legalese of everything, but suffice it to say that because of the way the judge classified the case, the jury was not really allowed to consider any of the evidence that the defendants presented.
Oh, no.
None. And really just had to say, answer this list of questions basically, and then decide based on the answers to those questions what the verdict was. And they came back with a verdict in favor of the plaintiffs and declared a $1.7 billion judgment against the defendants, which being an antitrust case is automatically tripled. So it was actually 5.4 billion.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the defendants in that particular case were the National Association of Realtors and then 4 major franchises. 2 of them settled before the case went to trial, but so by the time it went to trial, it was NAR plus 2 of the franchises, and I'm drawing a blank at the moment on which ones those were. NAR immediately started the process to appeal, and the first thing they were appealing was the classification of the case, so that they could present all their evidence. And at the same time pursuing a settlement, and they had certain things they were not willing to give up on in a settlement. One of those being that it had to preserve the consumer's choice for how they want to pay their agent, how, all of that. When the trial happened last fall, and many of you listening probably saw the headlines of end of 6% commissions or NAR to no longer set commissions. Okay, neither of those are true. Never have been.
Never have been, right? Yeah.
The commissions have always been negotiable. There's never been a set standard by law or by any organization. Is there a commonality of fees? Yes, but that's the result of a competitive marketplace, not because anybody said you will charge this. I like to use the analogy of thinking 2 gas stations across the street from each other. If one of them changes their prices, within an hour, the other one has changed their prices to match it. It's not because the 2 owners called each other on the phone and said, hey, let's change our prices together. It's the result of a competitive marketplace. So back to the cases. Within hours of that verdict coming out last fall, 23 copycat lawsuits were filed around the country, naming everything from MLSs to individual brokerages to, in some cases, even individual brokers.
Really?
Yeah. And it was becoming quite a mess. I was just, waiting for it to drop here. We were all just preparing. We were all on edge every day. Is this going to be the day I get served? Kind of a thing.
Oh, wow.
And we can talk more about the allegations in a little bit, but the result of it is that they did reach a settlement agreement, and it does preserve the consumer's choice to pay how they want to. It also released all of us in the industry from liability of any similar claims or lawsuits moving forward. Dang, I'm drawing a blank on the third thing. Anyway.
Well, what's really interesting though, and just to backtrack for a quick minute, individual brokers were concerned about being looped into this, not just organizations. That seems overreaching.
All of it was overreaching.
Well, yeah, then there's that. I've got more questions about that, but it's just shocking that as an individual person, you were worried and that other people were worried.
Yes. I was having conversations with our board of directors about preparing for the moment when it happened. I had calls from several of our local brokers saying, okay, what do I do to prepare? Because people were seeing the writing on the wall that this, if NAR lost an appeal, if they had proceeded with an appeal, but then lost the appeal, that 23 copycats would have exploded into thousands overnight. No doubt about that. And it would have actually completely bankrupted our national real estate industry. There's no doubt about it. So on March 15th, and the announcement was made that they had reached a settlement agreement. It preserved the 3 things that we wanted and that we were not willing to bend on. But as a result, there's a couple things we have to do differently. There's give and take in any settlement agreement. There's give and take. And so there's a couple of really significant changes we have to make. that will go into effect for us here locally August 7th. The national deadline is August 17th. Our board of directors here locally said we're going to put it into place August 7th so that we have a little bit of a buffer in case things don't go perfectly smooth, because we know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I like that our even though we're kind of a small area, that we are very, very proactive,
Yeah.
but constantly every day.
Yeah.
So we're talking to Tina Grimes, the CEO of our local Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. We're talking about right now, we're talking about changes that are occurring in our laws and practice. We only have about 30 seconds to the break. One of the shocking things that seemed to come to Southern Oregon was that we were going to have to change paperwork. Do you want to address that briefly before we go to a break?
I don't know if I can do that briefly.
That's probably not fair, is it?
Yeah, there's changes. There's just there's the changes that are coming change. They don't change the fundamentals, but they change the conversations and they change the processes. And that's what we'll spend the rest of the time getting into a little more detail on. But it doesn't change the fundamentals, and it is for, hopefully we can implement everything so it's still in the consumer's best interest. We firmly believe that the way we've always done it is in the consumer's best interest. And we'll talk more about that here after the break. But that was the third thing with the settlement. Absolutely no admission of wrongdoing, because we don't believe that the way we currently do it is wrong or is harming consumers. So,
okay, well, we'll be right back with Tina Grimes. Don't go away. We're talking to Tina Grimes, CEO of Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, our local RVAR, who we love dearly, and also a sponsor of the show. We want to say thank you to RVAR, John L. Scott, Ashland and Medford, and Guy Giles Mutual of Mortgage. Well, welcome back, Southern Oregon, to the Real Estate Show. We're excited to be speaking with Tina Grimes today from local Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. She's the CEO, and we're being updated and educated on the law changes and practices from some of the NAR settlement and how it affects Southern Oregon real estate. And what we were talking about before, Tina, was that there are some practice changes, there are some paperwork changes, but fundamentally real estate is still the same. Is that kind of where we were going?
Yes. So the lawsuits, I'm going to touch a little bit more on the lawsuits and what they were alleging, because then it leads into the changes and why they're happening. They were alleging, again, that sellers were being overcharged and it was inflating sellers' costs, using examples from other countries that commissions in other real estate agents in other countries only make about 1%. Those are not apples to apples comparisons. When you add up all the, so in most of those other countries, first of all, there is no buyer representation at all. So buyers are completely on their own. They don't have an advocate working for them.
Well, that's really interesting. So that is a uniquely American or primarily
American thing that came about in the 90s, actually, from consumer advocacy groups saying buyers need protection in these transactions. They need an advocate that is working,
which was true.
For them.
It was true.
Yeah. So that's been in place since the 90s here in America. But in these other countries, there is no buyer representation in a lot of them. And everything is a la carte. And by the time you add up everything that realtors in this country do for their clients, by the time you add all that up in these other countries, if there is buyer representation or not, each side is ending up paying anywhere between 6 and 10%, each side.
Wow. So it's actually more expensive.
It is. And escrows in these other countries take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. And
that's shocking.
And in a lot of the countries, buyers can be bumped clear up until the 11th hour. So you can be in escrow on a property for 9-10 months, and the seller all of a sudden gets a better offer and they say, oh, I'm going to switch to this one. You're out. It's too bad, so sad. And
wow. What a free-for-all.
It is. And honestly, other countries come to us and say, we know America has the best model. How do we change ours to model yours? And we have evidence.
That's cool.
So using these other countries as a comparison is not fair because, like I said, it's not an apples to apples comparison. So the fact that in this country, you know, each side is making more at face value on the percentage, it doesn't mean that it's apples to apples, like I said, because there's you got to look at the whole picture, not just what percentage are they charging, because that's not the whole picture.
Well, and American industries in general are highly organized.
Yeah.
And transparent.
Yes.
So yeah, that really is kind of unfair.
So now, but why I think we got here to where we got is we as an industry, and I'm not just saying the brokers, I'm including the associations and the MLSs in that as well. We as an industry as a whole have not been good at explaining to buyers how their agents get paid. And in fact, you know, too often, some brokers I know of some brokers that would just say, it doesn't cost you anything to work with me. It's all done on the other side. Well, unless there is a successful close of a transaction, the other side isn't paying anything either. It takes a buyer
at all.
It takes a buyer to trigger the whole thing even happening. And then yes, the buyer is paying their agent, but they're doing it through the transaction as part of the closing costs.
So that's the change of wording.
So
or the accurate wording that
is the accurate wording. Using. Yes. Yeah. So what is coming is a couple of big changes. One is that the MLSs will no longer be allowed to display an offer of compensation to a buyer's agent. It does not mean that sellers can't still offer one. It does not mean that listing agents can't still charge a percentage and then share part of theirs with the buyer's agent as it is currently done.
So can we back up a little bit? Because that's a really big deal to not have public disclosure of what the other side is being offered. And wasn't there a big to-do a few years ago to get that to be transparent to the consumer?
Yes, it was actually part of an agreement that NAR and the DOJ had entered into to make things more transparent, to help buyers understand what their agent's getting paid, and how. And but I will say the DOJ has been extremely vocal about the fact that they would really like sellers to pay their agents and buyers to pay their agents, and nobody ever offers to cover the other one's cost, period. Which unless lending laws change, that would dramatically harm the vast majority of buyers who need to be able to finance that cost into the transaction.
Yeah, most people get mortgages. The closing costs already are really steep. Just an average home in the $400,000 range. I mean, closing costs can be up to $10,000.
Yeah.
On top of your down payment.
Well, and that's it. A lot of buyers they're barely coming to the table with their down payment. And then you say, well, you need another, $5,000 to $10,000. They're not going to have it.
And they're not coming to the table with 20% down like they used to in the old days. Yeah. No. So I don't know how practical that is.
It's not practical. And I will say I've been trying to wrap my head around why the DOJ and the courts think that the new way will be better for consumers. I can't. I'm sorry. I'd love to have a conversation with somebody about why they think it's better. Yeah, so the offer of compensation will be removed from the MLS. It doesn't mean that it can't still happen the way it currently happens. It just will no longer be displayed in the MLS.
See, and that's the point I think we need to bring home is it's not that it's not happening, that there's a compensation offering. It's that the consumer doesn't get to see it now. Well, how do they find out?
So the buyer's agents, as they're working with buyers, and we'll get into the changes of buyer's agents working with buyers here in a little bit, but buyer's agents working with buyers will have to just call the listing agents and say, are you or your seller offering any buyer's agent compensation? And they'll just have to, we're kind of going backwards a little bit in efficiency and technology, because now you're going to have to communicate with every single listing agent. So.
Wow. Well, we'll have to talk about the practicality of that.
Right. I know.
So, I know this is jumping forward, but it's just a mini tangent that when we don't have the transaction handling the cost
Mhm.
for the commission, who gets paid what,
Yeah.
then it makes me think that the Department of Justice was worried that the real estate agents were avoiding certain listings, and it's not the real estate agents. And now this is the little fast forward part. I don't know what your experience is recently, but we have buyers saying, I don't want you to show me that house because it's going to cost me more money, because there's only a very few sellers that are not offering the going rate in Southern Oregon. See, I think of it as like electricians or plumbers.
Right.
You know, it's a regional thing, and it's fair market and it's competition. It's not price setting. I agree with you 100%.
Well, and I can go back. So part of the rationale, and this was part of the allegations in the lawsuit, as well as some of the conversations that the National Association has had with the DOJ over the years. They feel that having that compensation offer in the MLS, that a couple of things were happening. One, like you said, agents were possibly steering clients only towards the listings where that offer of compensation was higher.
But you lose your license for doing stuff
Well,
like that.
you
Yeah.
can. And you know, there is some I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Oh, so you can, like you just said, buyers are now coming and saying, hey, don't show me those. It's going to cost me more. As long as you have instruction from your client in writing to do that, that's not steering. That is following your client's wishes.
It was a shock though to us. Some of us have started practicing this early, like RVAR is suggesting, and we did not. A lot of us did not see that side effect coming at all.
Well, and for listing agents and sellers, I think a key thing to know is it is still in the seller's best interest to offer a BAC. They're going to get a higher, it's going to help get them the highest and best, because if you're not offering, and I'm reverting to initials, a buyer's agent compensation is a BAC. It's still in their best interest to offer that, because by not offering it, you, as we just were saying, you're eliminating a huge pool of potential buyers who can't afford to bring that extra cash to the table.
Yeah, and the market's not so good. We can get away with that. We got to take a quick break. We're talking to Tina Grimes, CEO of Valley Association of Realtors, our local RVAR, who we love dearly, and also a sponsor of the show. We want to say thank you to RVAR, John L. Scott, Ashland and Medford, and Guy Giles Mutual of Mortgage. Don't touch that dial. Tina will be right back. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks. We are talking to Tina Grimes, CEO of Valley Association of Realtors. Very, very interesting conversation here about the new changes for National Association of Realtors. And right before the break, we were talking about one of the unexpected side effects of these new laws is the buyers themselves are instructing agents not to show certain houses if they have to make up the difference in the, how do we say it, the fee offered to the buyer side by
they have to come out of pocket for that fee, because right now lending laws don't allow that to be financeable but if the seller is covering that cost for them, it can be financed.
Which is why it made so much sense to have it in the transaction, but it does, we're past that now.
So the other big change that's coming, and we've alluded to it a little bit, but let's go into a little greater detail. The other big change that's coming is that all buyer agents have to have a signed buyer representation agreement before they can even show a property.
Even one.
Now, if you're a buyer and you have just, you've found this home on the internet and you call up the listing agent or call whatever agent is shown on it, and you say, I'd like to go see this home. And they're going to say, well, great, but we have to sign this agreement first. You're going to be a little leery to do that. And I get it. I would be too. But please know that they're being required to do this. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be that you're agreeing to get engaged upon first sight. It could be, hey, we're going to sign this agreement. It is just for this one property that I'm showing you.
So you can do it just for one house.
Or it is for one day, or it is for whatever it is, until you get to know each other better. And then you can maybe talk about doing a longer term agreement.
Very good.
But buyer rep agreements do have to be signed prior to, or it doesn't have to be an exclusive agreement. It can be non-exclusive so that you're still free to go.
I saw that.
There just has to be something in writing, and the gist of what is in writing has to say, here is my fee. If I represent you and we close a deal, here is my fee. These are the services I will provide you as your buyer's agent. And then, buyers, get smart about this, because then you can instruct in writing, hey, I don't want to even see any properties that aren't offering to cover this cost for me. Or, maybe you have some, but not all. So you don't want to see any properties that aren't covering at least, X% of that cost.
That's actually a good idea.
So, but your buyer's agent needs to have that in writing for them to be able to do that. They cannot eliminate those properties if they don't have that instruction from you in writing. However, think of it also too, even if a seller's not offering it up front, it doesn't mean you can't ask for it. So think of, and I'm telling all of our agents this, all of our members this too. So this is good advice for the public too. Think of this in terms of any other condition of a property. A seller could put a home on the market that has a leaky roof. Can they do that? Can they sell it that way? Of course they can. Are they going to get absolute highest and best? No, they're not. If they want to take the time to fix the roof first, then they'll probably get a higher price on the sale.
That is a good example.
So think of
it in those kinds
of terms. Just because the seller is putting that leaky roof property on the market as is, doesn't mean a buyer couldn't make an offer and request that the roof be fixed before closing.
Yep.
Those kinds of negotiations, those kinds of requests get made and happen and accepted and rejected all day, every day. So this is really just making, this is changing the buyer's agent compensation to a negotiated term in every transaction is really what it's doing. It's taking it out of the MLS and making it a negotiated term of every transaction now.
Interesting. Is the National Association of Realtors going to request DOJ change their opinion on the disclosure of the buyer's agency commission?
In what?
In the MLS. I'm just wondering, because the consumer groups, like you said, benefit.
So that particular piece of it, that doesn't have anything to do with the DOJ. That's part of the court settlement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's not something that, the DOJ has given their opinion on it, but they don't have any control over it because it's part of the agreed upon court settlement, lawsuit settlement. So that's going to happen. We just, like I said, there's give and take in any settlement. And in order to achieve the three things we were not willing to bend on, this is something we have to give up. So.
Yeah. Well, and I'm saying this not just as an agent, but as a human. This whole thing seems unfair, especially since the defense mechanism wasn't allowed. And that's really weird. But oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand the why of all of it. I definitely don't agree with all of it, but at the same time, this is the hand we've been dealt. And so these are the cards we're going to play. And is it going to be messy for a while as people learn the new normal? Yeah. But will we learn it and will we keep going? Yeah, I have every confidence we will. And we will get better at explaining our industry to our clients, and therefore things will get better and move forward and just continue to be even more and more transparent.
And even though the news broadcasts were incorrect in what they were reporting, it brought it to the general population attention. So I don't know, what your experience is, but most of the buyers in Southern Oregon that we've been talking to, they think it's weird, but they're rolling with it. And the adjustment period for them has been short.
Yeah.
It's like, here's this piece of paper. Here's why we
Yeah.
have to do it.
Right. Yeah, like I said, it's a process change and it's a conversation change. It's not a change in the fundamentals, which is important. We can all learn new processes and new conversations. And back to what you said, there was not a single, no exaggeration here. There was not a single media headline that was correct. Not a
Right.
one. And I saw copies of press release after press release after press release that NAR put out trying to get them to correct what they had said. And not a single one of those press releases was run because that wasn't the sexy news.
Right.
So,
right. Who cares if it was wrong?
So it's really correcting that all that misinformation just has to be done at a grassroots level. So with things like this, so I'm hoping this will help, but
so I have a question about buyer representation being cut off at the knees. If people start going to the listing agent directly, what do you project is going to happen in Southern Oregon specifically?
I hope I'm wrong, but I do think there will probably be a wave of buyers who think they don't need to be represented and can go on their own or go directly to the listing agent. Two challenges with both those things. We have statistics that show that when both parties are represented, deals close faster, they close smoother, and they close with both parties happier. Because you have an advocate who knows what they're doing. That is, I've heard the analogy, you wouldn't go into surgery without a doctor there to perform the surgery. Why would you go into the most complicated financial transaction of your life without someone who knows what they're doing in your corner? So I'm a firm believer in buyer representation, and having the listing agent just represent you as well as the seller. Recognize that that listing agent owes fiduciary to the seller. Yes, they will owe fiduciary to you if they even agree to do it. Some listing agents won't do it because they don't.
That was my next question, because some states don't allow it.
So Oregon allows it, but you have a disclosed, I'm drawing a blank on the term, the dual agency.
Right, disclosed limited agency.
The disclosed limited agency that advises both parties that, hey, I'm going to have a conflict of interest in some of these areas as I try to navigate this for both of you. And there are some sellers who will say, no, I don't want you representing the buyer, because they know it will split their attention. So there's challenges with buyers thinking they can just go straight to the listing agent and have them do all of it. So
what is this word from the state of Oregon? Do they have an opinion about that?
I have not seen anything yet. I have not. Because it is allowed in state law as long as you disclose to both parties what that means to them. So
I wonder if they'll start having that conversation. They're very involved in our real estate practices, the state of Oregon.
And our real estate commissioner is a great guy who he's very thoughtful, and he does understand the industry. So, I see a wave coming, and of that coming, I hope it will be a very short-lived wave. As buyers recognize that, hey, it is in my best interest to still be represented by someone other than who's representing the seller.
And for those of us tracking, if the sellers are really lowering their commission, well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. We're going to continue with our conversation with Tina Grimes, the CEO of RVAR. Just a quick reminder that this episode will be aired again tomorrow, Sunday at 8 a.m. on our new radio home, AM 1300 The Ace and FM 107.9. Really enjoying our new radio station home, and want to finish up here with Tina, because wow, what a bunch of changes happening. And what's really great is that Southern Oregon RVAR is implementing these changes early. Thank goodness.
Yeah, like I said, we're the national deadline is August 17th, but we decided to give ourselves a 10-day buffer.
And
So
a lot of the agents are already practicing it,
and a
but
lot of
not.
them, which we've been strongly encouraging, is,
Mhm.
don't wait for the deadline, because,
Mhm.
if you do, then you're going to get caught flat-footed. So
Yeah, and you have done an amazing job. I'm sure you're exhausted going around explaining this not only to all the agents, but you're taking calls from consumers. And some of the questions must be about, what does it mean to have negotiable commissions? What is that? How are you dealing with that?
yeah, and that, fees have
Especially since they were negotiable all
they've
along.
always been negotiable. Yes, they've always been negotiable. So what that statement means, that is in the lawsuits, that is in the settlement agreement, and that is now going to be in all of our paperwork, because it's a required disclosure that has to be in all the paperwork moving forward. It doesn't mean that for you guys as agents that you have to go into every single meeting expecting to haggle over your fee. That is not what that means. What it means is that you, as an agent, you will set your fee, you will determine what services you offer for that fee. And that fee could be a percentage, it could be an hourly rate, it could be a flat fee. It can be whatever you want it to be. And you will have the conversation with the client. This is what I charge. These are the services I give you. And if the client doesn't like it, they can go shop around. That's what the negotiable part means. It means that there isn't a set amount that everyone in the industry is charging. So it
But it
doesn't
is
mean
regional. I'm telling you guys, it's like plumbers. They're all about $80 an hour.
well, like I said, there is going to be a commonality of fees, because that's the result of a competitive marketplace.
Right.
But there
Right.
isn't a set fee, and there will be, I think we're going to see agents getting kind of creative on how they charge. And maybe they'll have tiers of services and different fees
Oh,
for
that's
different tiers.
interesting.
Who knows?
Uh-huh.
That might be one of the,
Maybe they'll start charging more for weekend.
there you go.
Not me, because I thrive on that, but
Right.
yeah.
But the point is that consumers are free to shop around. Nobody, and you'll be able to go ask, and there is nothing wrong. Hey, consumers out there is nothing wrong with saying, hey, do you have any wiggle room in that? It's okay to say that to an agent. But at the same time, recognize this is how they make their living. They're not a nonprofit organization. And
well, sometimes
they have people responsible for them, or that they are responsible to, that they need to help feed and house. So
yeah, but the commission only thing in general means you get paid a success fee.
yeah,
So yeah, in some ways, I am really thrilled that the attention has been brought, because one of the nice side effects of all this, even though it was beyond imagination that it could go down this way, is that now the attention is being brought on the buyer's agent and how much work they do. Because I think they really were kind of an unsung hero.
and actually, so state law changed. The legislature passed a new state law in the last session, and buyer representation agreements were going to become a requirement in Oregon effective January 1.
That's right.
Anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
So the settlement for that aspect of the settlement, that's really nothing we weren't expecting anyway. It just made us have to do it sooner.
But I love the formality of getting to sit down, have a conversation with a buyer, and then sign a document for however amount of time you guys agree to, for however amount of money. It just brings the professionalism up.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It does. So,
yeah.
And so consumers, those of you who are listening, please know that you aren't going to have to sign it. If you go to an open house, you aren't going to have to sign an agreement to see the house.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So let's talk about the open house. Yeah. How do we do that now?
So the buyer representation agreement will be required when a consumer is asking an agent to do something for them, just for them. So if an agent is holding an open house, which is being done on behalf of the seller, and the listing agreement that has been signed by the seller, then they don't have to have buyer rep agreements for everybody that comes through that house, because they're doing it on behalf of the seller, not on behalf of a buyer. If buyers, if you see a sign in a yard and you call that agent and say, hey, I'd like to see this house, and they come over, they meet you there and they show you that house, they're doing that on behalf of their listing, their seller. So you don't have to have a buyer rep agreement in that case.
So if you're showing your own listing to your buyer,
Yeah,
you don't have to have
any consumer, not necessarily your buyer. So it's the question is, who are you there on behalf of? If you are at the property on behalf of the seller, you don't need buyer rep agreements. Now, if at the end of that, sign, so somebody calls on your sign, you meet them there, you show them the property. And if at the end of it, they say, well, this was nice, but it's not really what we're looking for. What else can you show us? The role has just switched. And now you need to have the conversation of, well, I'd be happy to show you other properties. If I represent you as your agent, here's my fee. Here's what I will do for you. That's when you start then having the conversation of a buyer's agent.
Well, and I think that's really a good thing. I really do. And I'm glad Oregon was going to do it anyway, because again, it brings the attention and professionalism up for the buyer's rep. I think a lot of buyers representatives ran around, did a lot of work, didn't get paid, and were very underrated.
Yeah.
For the most part. So yeah. So one of the side effects I think is very positive.
Yeah, I agree.
So we only have about 3.5 minutes left. And I know we did want to talk about some of the other things that Rogue Valley Association of Realtors does besides
settlement. That's the word of the year.
Right. But also you are available to consumers and the general public for ongoing questions and help and concerns. Yes.
Yeah. If somebody is really concerned about, if they're concerned about something their agent is doing or asking them to do or whatever, then yes, please contact me. We, as the Association of Realtors, we do not deal directly with the public unless it's questions about an agent or something that they're being asked to do by an agent.
Practices.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, if somebody has questions about the practice changes that are coming up, please feel, I'm happy to have those conversations. Yes.
Yeah. And you have a great way of explaining it. So one of the things that is coming up is a RVAR Foundation fundraiser.
Yes. Our annual Home Sweet Home Dessert Auction is coming up July 31st out at the Expo. It's a fundraiser for the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of our organization. And all the funds raised go then to organizations like Habitat for Humanity or to refill our first-time homebuyer grant that Access administers for us. Things like that, housing-related efforts within the community.
And it's within our community here in Southern Oregon.
It all stays in Jackson and Josephine counties, all local. Yep.
And when is that?
July 31st. I believe at 4.
So the annual dessert auction, July 31st at the Expo at 4 o'clock.
Yep.
That's fabulous. So are you going to be there?
I will be there.
Awesome. You can meet Tina, shake her hand, pat her on the back, tell her thank you for all of her hard work. Are there any other events that we have coming up this summer or early fall that we should announce today for people?
That's really the main one right now. We've got some other things in the, nope, I take that back. There is one other one. We are putting on, because mental health has become such a big issue for everybody, especially since COVID. I think that really brought a lot of issues to light, the trials and traumas of the lockdown on people. But we are hosting it's going to be small. It's our first one, trying to ever do this, but we're going to host a health and wellness fair.
Oh, awesome.
September 27th. And we're inviting local area organizations and agencies to come and just be part of that and just kind of be a resource fair for people to come and see what's available, what's out there, how they can improve their, not just their mental health, but their overall health and wellness.
And supporting each other. So Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, Tina Grimes, CEO, always a great influence, always a great explainer. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
And maybe we'll have you back later in the year and see how all the new laws are going.
Happy to. Yeah, it'll
Well,
be interesting.
yes, it will. Well, Southern Oregon, that's all for now. Have a beautiful weekend. We'll see you next time. For the most part, 70 to 80% of the sellers, business as usual. We're talking to Tina Grimes, CEO, Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. We've got another great segment left with Tina, so don't go away. We'll be right back after a quick word.